I've always been interested in cars ever since I was really young. I vividly remember it being about 9 years old. I think it was 1976, and my sister's friend gave my sister and I a lift, and I was fascinated by this car that she had. She was an older woman, and she had just taken delivery of an orange 240 saloon, and I just thought it was so fancy. I always think that people are, by and large, attracted to the cars of their youth, you know, the cars that their parents drove, or maybe the cars that were contemporary when they were younger. I'm Paul, and this is my 1971 model year Volvo 144 Deluxe. I bought the car at an auction about 2 years ago, coming up. It was a bit of a whim. I had been looking for a 200 series car on and off. I didn't really have any money, didn't really know what I was wanting, kept on getting distracted, and I saw this car advertised initially privately. I discounted it for a number of reasons, but then saw it had gone to Morris Leslie Auctions in Errol, in Perthshire, and I thought, take a punt. Didn't expect to get it. Spent the money that was meant for my kitchen, and that is true, on the car, because I did get it, and it's staying. When I bought the car, it was good. I went to pick it up with my friend Andrew, and he drove us up, and we were initially a little bit horrified. It was probably very naive of us, because the car basically had no brakes, and we had no way of getting it back to Edinburgh without driving it. We didn't have a trailer with us, and you can't tow one of these on a trailer in a Mini. So we decided that what we'd do is try it. And so we had a fairly, well for me, a fairly uncomfortable drive down. We did get back to Edinburgh, it did get put into the garage, and it did get fixed. But I didn't expect that, I wish I had known. So there's a lesson there for you folks, take a trailer. A few things have had to be done to it. When I first got the car, it had clearly been painted at some point in its life. Wasn't the world's best paint job. I used it for the first year every single day, including through the winter, which was probably a bit ambitious, maybe not very wise. Took its toll on the bodywork, to be honest with you. Nothing major, but I've recently just had some work done. Some of it was really correcting, I think, bits which were a bit ropey when I bought the car. Other things were fixing, you know, bits that probably were caused a little bit by me running it through an entire winter. That won't be happening going forward. Mechanically, the car, actually when I got the car, I had only 55,000 miles on it. And although there's almost no history with the car, I actually do think that's probably true. Partly, folk probably know Volvo always do 6-digit odometers, so if I'd gone round the clock, we'd know that. And the general condition of the car, it just suggested it was that. I've tried to find out about the car. I know little bits about it. I've got the original owner's manual, and I know the guy in Bournemouth who purchased the car from you in 1971. But weirdly enough, he didn't seem to have the car serviced other than its pre-delivery inspection, which maybe he just didn't keep the records. I've pieced together a few changes because I've got a few receipts over the years. The car, you know, it's a 71 car. Who's going to worry about that? Anything it needs doing is going to get done by me. So it's in, I would say, very good usable condition. It's got the B20 2-litre engine, which is of legend and meant to be extremely robust. But of course, what they don't tell you is it's also like driving a tractor. It's very, very noisy. It's coupled to a Borg-Warner 3.5 gearbox, automatic gearbox. So you can imagine that's not really going to be the fastest thing in the world, and it isn't. But you know, I've driven it quite some distances. I've taken it down to the Festival of an Exceptional last year, down in Lincolnshire. I said it's a 1971 model year, and at this point Volvo did that kind of American thing where you introduce the next model year halfway through a calendar year. So I actually have two brochures for this car, both printed in 71, but one which is for the 71 model year, which ran through from 1970, and one which is for the 72 model year. And they actually made quite a few evolutionary changes in the car, which I think continued up until the launch of the 200 series in 75, if I remember rightly. For 71, you got a different grille, the three-piece with a black insert. Prior to that, many people might be familiar with a one-piece aluminium grille, which was what they launched the car with. You also got luxury of luxury, an electric clock. So that's something to know, isn't it? For 72, it was a bit more drastic. So things like the door handles become recessed. A center console is introduced into the car, which this car doesn't have, but the strip speedo and things like that remain. But also, this car is automatic, as I've said, so your column shifter goes to the floor for 72, and then if you bought the manual version, it went from a direct shift into a remote shift. So little changes like that. The following year, you begin to see things which evolve through to the 200 series cars. Indicators move up the wings at the front, the back end changes slightly with bigger lights. And I think for 74, I'm not 100% sure, that was the year they introduced the massive Volvo bumpers, which were obviously federally mandated in the US. But I've had a lot of cars. I've never been very smart, so I've always done really stupid things when it comes to cars. Sometimes that's been, just ridiculous. I've had, when I was younger, cars that might seem quite fancy now, but at the time they weren't. They were just affordable. I had a Mini Clubman. I had a 1978 Alfa Romeo Alfetta 1.8, which was very cool. I didn't even really realize at the time how cool that was, but I wish I had it now. I then sort of got into some more sort of contemporary, Peugeot 205, Seat Cordoba, a Saab 900, when you need a car that's actually got to do a job. And then I started to buy some really dumb stuff. The first of it being a Plymouth Reliant Estate that I bought. Very random, but it was kind of cool. It was pretty cheap, and I enjoyed it until it rusted away, which it did really badly. I then bought my very first Mercedes, which was a W124 Estate, very nice, 230 TE, and that was at the time that was a considered purchase. Domestic things happen, it happens in life, and I had to go and get sold as assets were being split. And with the small amount of money I had, I bought a Honda Civic, a 1975 Honda Civic with a 2-speed Honda-matic gearbox, and I drove that as my only car for quite some time. I then replaced that, and I make no bones about it, I bid on eBay when I was very drunk one Friday night and won a 1985 Chevrolet Caprice station wagon. So out goes the Civic, in comes the Chevy, and I drove that as my daily driver for a good few years until I had an inheritance and I decided not to pay my mortgage off or anything like that, but to buy a Mercedes-Benz R107 SL, which I dailied for 12 years, and it costs a lot of money to do that. But it was great, and I've done it, and I'll never be able to afford another one. There's been other stuff there. Mark I Volkswagen Golf convertible, which I bought on a whim. Absolutely hated it. I'd always wanted one. Couldn't stand the thing when I got it. And eventually, my current other car is a W124 Cabriolet, which is a beautiful, beautiful piece, but that's getting sold because I made a deal with myself that I'd give them a year together, and then one had to go. And I didn't know at that point which one it would be, but it is going to be the Mercedes. It has to go. Partly because it's got a lot more money wrapped up in it, and that will enable me to spend money on this car, which I fully intend to keep. mostly for me, it's the enjoyment of driving this thing. So I do use it. I use it all the time. I mean, you know, if I'm going to the shops, I'm going in this. It's great. I don't have to drive to work, which is a big bonus. The advantage of running an old car like that, I think, is that, well, A, it's road tax free. It doesn't technically require an MOT, but it does have one, and I believe that we should. It's quite cheap to insure. It's not great on fuel, 20 mpg, maybe 23 on a bit of a run, but what are you going to do with a Borg Warner? But it's enjoyable, and I really love it. I really enjoy using it for what it was intended. You know, people did stuff in these cars. They weren't showroom pieces. So yeah, it's good.